The film opens with a naked old guy in bed talking about time to another guy in the same bed or on the same bed. He tells him that he slept with his own daughter. This is after the credits come on first in mirror image. And he says, time destroys all things. The film is told scene by scene in reverse. It features a 9-minute rape scene. 2002's Irreversible, directed by Gaspar Noé, RickRamos.
I don't know. I watched this film in a theater, and it feels kind of like it was interesting because it was 2002, 2003, somewhere around there. I can't remember. You say it was released in 2002, but I don't know if it got a stateside release until 2003. I can't remember. But it was I know it was a con. It was not a favorite at Cannes. It had this weird reception. The film played, and people sat in silence when it ended until the next film. I think it's a disturbing film. I think it's a difficult film. The question becomes, is it gratuitous in pornography? Is it violence for violence sake? Or is he saying something with it? Gaspar Noé is the type of filmmaker from the other films that we have watched of his. Into the Void is the one that comes to mind because it's the only one that I can really reference in this case. But I've also heard that he's an extreme type filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know a lot about the films that he's made. I'm not familiar with them, but I will say this: that when I went to see this film, I thought that I was pretty jaded to the point as far as on-screen violence that there wasn't a whole lot that I could see that would bother me. And this is a film that really got to the core of, I think, got to the core of what difficult movie watching is. I was really blown away by it. I haven't seen it in 22 years, which is crazy. I haven't seen this film in 21, 22 years. I have seen the rape scene since then, one time. Because every once in a while, I like to go back and figure out if things that bothered me then bother me in the same way, or was it just the initial shock of something? I hope that makes sense. I had to go back and watch it again to see, and I did. I think it was about a decade after the initial viewing. And then I haven't watched it again until 2 nights ago when we were preparing for this show. I don't think this is an exploitative movie. I don't think it's gratuitous. I don't think it's I don't think it's irresponsible filmmaking. The reputation of the director, and from what I know about the other films, leads me to believe that he's a very artistic director with an offensive type of bent, meaning that I think he goes out of his way to shock, but not necessarily just for shock. For the case of just not for the power of shock, but this movie is very shocking. It's a very difficult film to watch. I don't recommend it. I don't think I could recommend it to anybody. I would really have to get to know you well to tell you whether or not I think it's something that you should watch. If you're watching from a purely cinematic standpoint and you want to understand the power of cinema and you want to understand the possibilities. This is a film that is about this is just about the most extreme example of violence against women that I've ever seen on screen. And I think it does it in a way that is very both realistic and painful. Whereas your average rape scene in a film is purely exploitation. The majority of rape scenes that I've seen in film are almost purely exploitation.
Explain what the difference that you're making.
It's very difficult to describe because it's a feeling more than anything. Because there seems to in a lot of films, there seems to be if you take the worst rape scene that I've ever seen in a film was in Michael Winner's Death Wish 2. And I've talked about this in the past, and anybody who's listened to us have this discussion, because this is a discussion that we've had numerous times over the decade that we've been doing this show. That film, the rape scene of Charles Bronson's maid in that film was done so gratuitously, and it felt like there was a bloodlust in the making of it. It was extreme in every sense of the word, and it was a gang rape, and the sense of it was uncomfortable in a different way. It was uncomfortable in a way that have you ever seen it?
That's with Jeff Goldblum, right?
No, that's the first Death Wish film. That rape scene is more of a psychedelic rape scene. By the time they got to Death Wish 2, they were working for Canon. The original film was Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. It was MGM, and it was more of an established and respectable film production company. Canon was low budget. Menahem, Gold, and that other ass. Those two assholes. That it was pure exploitation. There just seemed like, I guess the second Death Wish film seemed more theatrical in its presentation of the rape, where this doesn't seem that way. They're both ugly and difficult to watch, but this feels like a purely violent and, I guess, more honest depiction. And I was wondering this as I was watching it the other night, is the fact that it's Monica Bellucci, one of the most beautiful women that's ever been on screen. When you see that it's her, and she's getting sodomized on the floor of a tunnel, there's something very, it overpowers the senses, and it's the lighting, and it's I think you feel more for her character than you do. You know what also it is? It's a lead character that you're seeing all this build up towards, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. Whereas in the Death Wish film, it's a side character that you don't know, and you don't care about. You don't care about more than watching, more than the trauma of watching violence happen to a person. Mm-hmm. Monica Bellucci, for as shitty as it may sound, but it's still a real experience that you bring to it, where you know who she is, you've seen her, in some ways you've lusted after her, and then you see this level of violence and depravity and it's sickening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
And for it to go on for 9 unbroken minutes, and there are touches to it where you can see a man in the background coming into the frame, seeing what happens, and then walking out. But also La Tenia, the tapeworm, stopping to snort coke or whatever. Yeah, the tapeworm. To stop to snort cocaine or whatever other fucking drug he's doing. It makes it both more real and overpowering and disgusting. And it seems like it's a really hard thing to watch, and you're seeing her on the ground like that, and you imagine that's exactly what a rape is. I remember watching, and I've told you about, the only movie that Gary Oldman ever directed is called Nil by Mouth, and it's about his upbringing in London, I think, or a poor part of England, and Ray Winstone is his father. And this is the same year that Ray Winstone did Tim Roth's The War Zone, where he plays the pedophile father. But there's a scene in that film, he's an abusive alcoholic father, and he beats the shit out of his wife. And when you see a man beat a woman in a film, it's usually restrained. But the beating that is subjected in this film is unlike anything I've ever seen. It rang more true. It rang from a more honest and autobiographical place, which made it more difficult to watch. And I think that's some of what is going on here. There's violence that leads up to it, and the violence that leads up to it is really extreme and graphic and painful to watch. In reverse. Yeah, we're going to talk about that, because I'm really interested in whether there's a lot to talk about. But one of the things is, would this film still have the same power if it had been told in chronological order?
And we talked about that. And there's a chronological cut.
There is a chronological cut, but I don't even know if I want to watch that. From an experimental, you have?
No, I said I feel the same way. I want to watch it because I don't want to deny it. At the same time, I feel that what works for this film is that it's in first order.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Continue in terms of the violence.
So the violence and I don't want anybody to think that I'm trying to sit on a high horse and I understand women and I'm a social justice warrior or anything like that, because I'm not the male feminist or anything like that. But this type of violence, and I know psychologically it's because of the level of abuse and the violence against a person's humanity. That's the way I view it. That's, I look at it like that. It's very difficult because I don't, number one, I was far too young to have seen a rape scene when I first saw one. And I think I was about 10 years old when I saw Death Wish 2. But, and that's a 5-minute rape scene. I think that's a 4 or 5 minute rape scene. This is more just to see the depravity of it and the level of the way he speaks to her, the way he talks, and I think that's another level too, where the way he tells her that she's got an ass like a little boy's, and he's gonna fuck her in the ass, and it's just extreme on top of extreme on top of extreme, and it doesn't. You don't feel like it's just one of the most uncomfortable feeling. It's one of the most uncomfortable things that I've ever experienced in a movie theater. And I saw it in a theater that was practically empty with a friend of mine, and we were silent afterwards. We had a real rough time afterwards. And if this theater was equipped the way a lot of theaters that there was a certain sound design in this movie. I don't know if you saw this in a theater or if you watched it at home first, but
No,
there was
I never thought of it.
okay. The way the sound design was set up, there was a low buzzing, and I could hear it somewhat on my sound system, but it kind of sounded like a busted speaker. But there was
Yeah, like
this
that little, like the static.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was something that was designed to nauseate people and make them even more uncomfortable. And it really does add to it. And it goes away in the lovemaking scene when you see them back at their flat, and it becomes more an idyllic couple's story. And I think that is also problematic in the viewing, because you see what their life was. A lot of times you see what somebody's life is, and then it becomes this thing. But you weren't aware of where it was going to go. If you don't know what the movie you're going into is going to be about, and the rape scene comes out of nowhere, then it's a shock. But this is different because now we're going back in time and we're seeing them in happier days, and there's a hopelessness to the movie because you know it ends badly.
Mm-hmm.
The boyfriend is gonna go to prison. They're both gonna go to prison for this revenge killing that occurs. And a lot of people were put off by the scene in which because you basically the story is that a woman and her boyfriend, who it was Vincent Cassel and Monica Bellucci, who were a real life couple at this time during the making of this movie, which also adds a kind of weird uneasy factor to it. All of this is like a deep felt psychological thing that is difficult to explain. Sometimes that psychological shit is there and you can't really figure it out. I like that in a movie. I like when a movie has that kind of unease. So they're going to go out, and they're going to go out with an ex-boyfriend of hers. And there's some arguments at the party that they're at, the house party, and she's dancing and she's having a good time, but the Cassel character is snorting coke and trying to, I don't know, push off this guy, trying to get him interested in something else, so that he's basically trying to uncock block himself. And as you see it in the story, you start to see, because this guy's a real fucking loser.
The friend.
The friend.
The ex. But I think he's also trying to get the guy to not be hung up for his own purposes, but also for the guy's purposes. Mm-hmm. Like, don't be that guy who's hung up on this chick, even though this chick is my chick.
Yeah.
And I also benefit from you not being hung up on her right now, mm-hmm. But like stop.
Yeah.
Like, just snap out of that.
You don't get it so much in the beginning, but then when you see that because they start having these conversations about how he couldn't make her come
on the metro.
Yeah, and they're going back and forth, and she's just kind of, and it's weird because there was a part of me that was like, why are you still maintaining this relationship like this? It's obvious that he's still in love with you, and you're playing into this. You're just cut this motherfucker loose. I mean, he's a sad bastard. And I start to wonder, is this feeding into your ego? Now, none of this that I say is in any way validating what happens to her. No,
this is just their weird dynamic that they have.
And that's why that's one aspect of the film that I find very difficult, because it's this relationship between three people, one a former lover, two current lovers, and she is upset with her current boyfriend because of his behavior, the fact that he's snorting coke, she doesn't know that he's hitting on other women, but she gets upset. She leaves. She makes the mistake of going into an underground tunnel to cross the street. She runs into a hooker, a transvestite hooker. She doesn't know that at the time, that is being beat by her pimp. She tries to get away from that, and he grabs a hold of her, and he rapes her in probably the most violent rape scene that I've ever seen on screen. A lot of factors in the filming of it actually add to that discomfort of watching it. But then the film goes into her being pulled out by the ambulance, and Cassell's character seeing her, realizing what has happened, and then it's a manhunt as they scour the city looking for the pimp. They find the pimp,
aided by these extortionists,
scumbags who have the ID of the prostitute, find him, and are led to a gay nightclub, a gay S&M nightclub called the Rectum. And then it's a descent into hell, which is very obvious in its Dante-esque parallels, but really done well. Really done well. And ugly.
Noé is all about those liminal spaces, and going through tunnels and going through down into hell.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he's very good about that kind of like crossover into another realm.
Yeah.
You see that
it's exceptional here. Yeah, we saw it a little bit of it in Enter the Void, but it's exceptional here. Yeah.
Yeah, you see it. And he's really into strobe lighting. We'll get into more of his style, but he has like the aesthetics of like nightclub, of certain types of electronic dance music, and the culture that goes with that, the lighting, the droning music, the beats, the drugs, the sense of being like intoxicated. So they
descend
down, up. They descend, but it's like going into the rectum.
Yeah, and that's obvious as well, but it's really well done with that. They find the man. They don't realize that they have the wrong man. They find him. They don't find the right man.
Well, they're next to each
other. That's right. And they start going at it with each other, and the Cassell character ends up overwhelmed on the ground. They break his arm
at the
elbow. Yeah. And then the guy attempts to rape him. So he's getting ready to rape him. The friend, the ex of Bellucci's character, stops that from happening and beats him to death with a full-size fire extinguisher, and collapses his skull. And it's that's fucking ugly. A lot of people were put off, but that didn't bother me as much as the rape. For whatever reason, that didn't bother me as much as the rape. I mean, it was ugly.
It's crazy because this film, you start to create, it does what, and I've said this before, and this kind of thing plays into it, and we'll say it again. Casualties of War, De Palma forces the audience to create these like hierarchies in their minds.
Yeah.
So Casualties of War is a Vietnam film about wartime atrocities. And one of those examples of those types of atrocities that occurred and often occur in war is they go into this hut and they're going to abduct a woman so that they can make her, they can rape her and make her a sex slave, basically, for the U.S. for that group of soldiers. And so you see on camera 2 Vietnamese young women, or I don't know if this is Cambodia, Southeast Asian women, and basically what you're looking at, it's looking at it through their eyes. So basically, you're gonna, as a viewer, you're gonna guess which one they're gonna take, and it forces you because you're already anticipating what's the next thing, and it's fucked up because now you feel complicit because you're being the camera is pointed right at their faces, and it's not like a point of view thing where you see the person's hand and you're like, oh, I'm literally like in this person's head. It's just the camera is, and so you're looking at them because the camera's facing them shooting. And so you're now in the position that you have to guess which one they're going to choose. And by guessing which one they're going to choose, you're, in a sense, choosing. And so what happens, they're going to pick the quote-unquote prettier one. And that's the one they take. And it's things like that that make it worse, that make it more fucked up, that make it... Because now it's like, what happens to the soldiers who see this but do nothing?
It's
and
yeah.
Go ahead.
No. Go. I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
What I'm saying is that you become, as the viewer, like one of those soldiers who sees it and does nothing. You become like one of those people in this film where you see a figure in the distance walk down the steps to go through that tunnel, sees that there's an assault taking place, and turns back around. So we're witnessing the witness leaving. We're witnessing all of this shit. Because this film is in reverse, we're seeing this violence with the fire extinguisher, this brutality in this gay BDSM oriented club called the Rectum. And later on, we're going to have to create this, where it's this hierarchy where it's like, well, what seems worse? What's worse? What's more painful? What's harder to watch? And that kind of leads to, because it's scene by scene, but in reverse.
Yeah.
So the scenes play out from beginning to end, but sequentially they're in reverse order. So it's not like people are walking backwards or anything. It's just the order. The ordering of the scenes is from the last scene to the first scene in the film.
Yeah.
And so you're creating these, because we do that, and this is one of those times that the filmmaker is playing with our minds, playing with our capacity to create these hierarchies and to compare and to contrast. And so when you're talking about the actual scene itself, of course, we're now going to think about all the other rape scenes that we've seen. We're going to think about all the other fight or violent films that we've seen, or deaths, or, oh shit, is this the first time I've ever seen a fire hydrant death, murder? Is this the first time I've ever seen someone's... What are the films where I've seen someone's skull smashed? Let me try to think. Wow, this is crazy. What the fuck? Right? All this stuff. And then you're comparing, well, this friend is the hot-headed, this character is the hot-headed character. He's the one that's supposedly like more virile. He's the one that has like the hot girlfriend. This is the mild-mannered one. Oh, okay. So you're you're seeing that play out because the frenzy is happening. Then you see the development of that as you go backwards. But from the beginning, the mild-mannered one is the one that actually fucking does the most brutal, violent murder. The other guy, Vincent Cassel's character, is incapacitated pretty quickly. By the time you get to the rape scene, now you're doing comparisons. It's like what you talked about. You pose the question: does it seem worse because she's more beautiful?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a fucked up question.
It is, but I felt shit. I felt bad even thinking of it at the time.
But we have to ask it because it's because there is that quality. We do have this kind of mind and this kind of tendency where it's like, well, why is it that crime in a rich area seems worse, or is portrayed in such a way that it seems worse than crime or more shocking at least than in a low income area?
Well, if you want to go with more shocking, it's simply because we are expected by virtue of living in it to be used to it. If you're going to present it that with that,
don't live in it.
Yeah.
And I agree with that if you live in it. But if you don't live in it, it's like, well, it's expected. Because it's like, well, there should be more crime in a more lower income area, blah, blah, blah. But oh my God, they're fucking stealing watches at these outdoor cafes in fucking Beverly Hills. Can you fucking believe that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Have you heard of the Grim Sleeper killer?
Yeah. I remember.
Those murders were happening during in the mid 80s during some of those murders during the Richard Ramirez murders.
Mm-hmm. What's the difference?
But the difference is, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
The difference is that the victims were African American sex workers.
That's right.
Primarily. And
that's right. Yeah.
And versus, I mean, a lot of the victims were so varied in the Richard Ramirez thing that there was that element to it, but there was an element of like Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker killer, that could be you.
The Richard Ramirez case,
are you a hooker? Are you a black hooker?
Yeah.
No. Okay, then you have nothing to worry about.
Richard Ramirez was more. It was more problematic for people simply for what you just said. Is that because there was a randomness in? You're supposed to be safe in your homes and in your neighborhoods. And you could talk about the violence inherent in sex work, but the real statement there is, who cares? That's why the Grim Sleeper murders, that's why he was able to get away with it for as long as he did, because you're killing people that no one cares about. They're marginalized people. Yeah.
I didn't know about those murders while they were happening. Because it wasn't on the news. I knew about the Night Stalker because that was getting all kinds of play. And so then it goes into like the idea of like what they call the missing white girl syndrome and all that stuff.
Patrice O'Neill has a great bit on that where he talks about, and he does it in such a way as that he slaps the audience with their complicitness in it. If you haven't seen Elephant in the Room, check it out because he has a good little bit about that, and it's on point. But yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's kind of like what we're getting at with this is that like are these and we're complicit, and is it how much of it is it like are we aware of it? Who's to say that like it could have been any actor, any character. That and in the way that it's filmed, if you just replace that person, it's still going to be just as fucked up. But the fact that it's a juxtaposition of this beautiful woman who's dressed really well, and now you're seeing her on the floor of this underpass of this like tunnel, this underground tunnel, with trash. And you're seeing it's also the contrast between this fucking thug character played by a dude who's had his fucking nose broken.
Yeah.
Because you can see it. I think he's like some kind of fighter. The guy who plays that character. Mm-hmm. So you can see the violence on his face.
Yeah. There's a couple of reasons for that. He had to have a face that stood out so that when you see the beating in the S&M bar,
you know who's who.
Yeah. Well, at that point you don't know anybody. Because at that point you're like, maybe it's like, did they get the right guy, you know? Yeah,
by the time you go backwards to the rape scene, you know that you're like, oh shit, they killed the wrong guy.
Yeah, yeah. Now, see, like when you go into this movie, I mean, it's not like they could have kept this film a secret. If you went to see Irreversible, you knew what this movie was. You knew that this film was basically, I don't know if it was sold on, but the reputation that got a lot of people into the theaters was, it was Monica Bellucci, and it was a 9-minute rape scene that was just so fucking difficult. It was
yeah.
You know, I
break these films down to like their most basic shit in the way that you tell what, like, oh, remember, it's what I said. Oh, Malcolm X, angry black guy, angry black political guy in the 60s, gets killed. I mean, that's the synopsis.
Yeah.
What's Irreversible? It's a film told backwards, 9-minute rape scene. Monica Bellucci.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, and it's not it, but that's it.
That's the tagline. That's what gets it made.
You know, the Exorcist, girl gets possessed by the devil, head spins. That's how people reduce shit.
The devil gets into a 9-year-old white girl. The devil's a cold motherfucker.
That's right.
It's fucked up. And this is the thing that sells. And it was the reason I went to see it. I went to see this movie because of the uproar, because I was like, and part of me, the ego was like, they can't put something on screen that's going to fuck me up to the point where I can't watch it. This movie fucked me up. This movie really kicked my ass. And
I saw Death Wish 2. And then I've already asked my friend if he's seen Death Wish 2 of that scene, and he confused his rape scenes. It's like, nope, that's the other one. That's Death Wish 1. That one's more psychedelic. This one has more notes of psychedelia.
This is a really painful, and
it's disturbing, and this time this one made me angry.
Really, why? Specifically, why is what I mean.
I don't know if it's because I just got married. I don't know if it's
oh wow,
you know what I mean?
No. That's as weird as that sounds. It's like it does change. If you'd had a kid, it would change. There's a lot of shit that changes your viewing of a thing.
And again, it's not like this thing that it's like, oh, it means it's worse just because I got fucking angry. That doesn't mean anything. It's horrible because it's horrible. It's horrible regardless of whether you think that the actress playing that character is like one of the most beautiful or not. Like that doesn't matter. But all of these things are choices, and the dialogue, these are filmmaker choices where that character is calling her a pig. And calling her
a sow.
A sow. Female pig. And then going on to, he himself is doing comparisons now. So he's comparing her rectum, her anus, and all that to others that he's violated. And I was angry, but I was also like, fuck, man, like, what happened to this guy? Because I don't think in terms of that simplistic kind of like law enforcement. When you hear them use this language, they seem to talk about good guys versus bad guys. They're still like, and I get it, because it's kind of like, in order to function, you can't be Denzel Washington and Crimson Tide like all the time trying to have that level of nuance. Sometimes in order to get shit done, like you need to be fucking like this is you go left or you go right. This is that.
Yeah.
You know, the world has to be simple because otherwise you're going to question everything you fucking do and then you're not going to do anything. So I understand that why you hear military kind of people talk about, and they've seen atrocities, etc. They'll talk about bad guys. They'll talk about evil.
Mm-hmm.
Because they've seen what can be interpreted as evil. I don't like to think of things in terms of that kind of simplistic thinking of like, oh, well, this person is, you know, Richard Ramirez, the documentary, the Netflix special, oh, this guy's evil.
Evil robs it of the humanity. Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's kind of like evil is for fiction and for religious kind of conceptions of the cosmos. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
It's not for the and you can think of it as, yeah, it's for the street, but it's like, well, that's your interpretation. It's these people are fucked up.
With the problem,
that's an interpretation too.
Go ahead.
The problem is what?
The problem is calling something evil. It robs it of the humanity of it. And when I say the humanity, I was like the human capacity to commit evil acts, which is something that is we're primal. So it's there. When you say something is evil, you take it into the realm of religion or the supernatural, where this is no longer a human quality. Men rape. People rape. And for you to imagine that that human beings don't have the capacity to go there with their depravity, with their base needs, or their need to just simply hurt somebody, because at a certain point he just looked at him and was like, you beautiful cunt, I'm going to change that. And he beats her in the face, and then he flips her over and he slams her face into the ground. Now he's just done about the worst thing that you can do to a human being. And now it's not enough. He has to further, he doesn't have to, it's not just the robbing her of her humanity and her dignity and violating her in the most brutal manner. Now I have to scar her and destroy something because there's a wickedness in him. There is evil in him, but it's not something that is inhumane. It is very human. It is a quality that exists in people, and once we start to separate ourselves from the possibility of it, you rob yourself of the ability to really examine something clearly. That's what this motherfucker is. Yeah.
Then you get into the point where it's like, well, how could this happen? How could such an evil exist? And it's kind of like, this shit exists this is part of the bag. You know what I mean? Like, this comes with the fucking, this is not a fucking, a bug in the system. It's a feature.
Yeah. This is what we do as a species. I remember I was teaching at a foreign language school for adults. And I had a French student in there. And we were talking about, for some reason we brought up the military and the subject of Vietnam and war crimes. And he said, well, so maybe it was a war that was going on I think it was a war that was going on at the moment. And they were talking about the atrocities that occurred during war. And I said, well, yeah, war brings atrocities. War people do horrible, horrible things in war, and especially to women and children. And he said, well, France. He was French. And he said, there were a number of, even as the Allies were liberating France, there were a number of women that were raped by American soldiers. And I stopped. And I just thought to myself, holy shit, he's right. I don't know this to be the case, but I'm pretty sure it is. Because
yeah, I mean, like, are we shocked?
Yeah, I mean I was shocked at how naive I had
maybe
been.
shocked but not surprised.
Yeah, no, but I was more shocked at my own naivete of having never realized, oh my God, liberators would take advantage of that as well. Men are going to rape women, and it's not a demon, it's not a devil, it's not this foreign element that overtakes. And I was just like, oh my God. And that shit sat with me for weeks, because we talked about it, and I asked him a few questions, and he would tell me, and he was like, it's a big deal that nobody talks about. It was disturbing. A few years ago, you and I did an episode on Sidney Lumet, remember?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That opening, that's how they opened the movie, with Lumet talking about being on a train somewhere in was he in India? I don't know.
Yeah, somewhere in South Asia.
South Asia. And he talked about American military grabbing a 12 or 13-year-old girl off of the platform and taking her back into into where they were and raping her and then selling her.
And and then they tell Sidney Lumet, like, you want some?
Yeah. They tell like $5 or something, £5 or something like that. And Lumet said, he just turned around and went back. And he said, what was I supposed to do? What could I do? And that moment made me cry a little bit, because I was like, oh my God, those are the decisions that we are faced with. That is the level of depravity that exists in the human species. And
yeah,
that's
and this leads philosophers to ask the question about the problem of evil, to say, why do bad things happen in the world?
Yeah.
And to think about that. And when they get with religion, it's like, well, if in the traditions where God exists, where that happens, where, for example, Christianity, they'll say, like, well, if God is supposed to have these attributes of good, and God is all knowing and all powerful, why does he allow?
Yeah.
And then they wrestle with those things, or however they attack that.
Yeah.
But then it's like, well, so then it's justice, right? Then it's like, whatever kind of system of justice you have in your society, regardless of the type of society, whether it's a tribal society or an industrialized society, obviously justice and law don't always line up, because people take the law into their own hands, and what ends up happening, it's like, well, now you have an atrocity for an atrocity. You have fucking Hammurabi, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, which is itself fucking thousands of years old. And then you get a whole fucking tradition of stories about, this is what happened. You have like the cautionary tales, where it's like, this person did this and this is what happened to them. Because kids, if you do bad things will happen to you. So don't fucking do bad things. And then, of course, there are going to be those who, they go, yeah? Like what? What kind of bad things? Right? And you get a whole genre of fucking rape revenge films. And we've talked about before, I talked about when we did the film Revenge.
I'm glad you brought this up, yeah.
We did, and we're going to talk about it more, because we're going to do I Spit on Your Grave. We're going to do more shit like that.
Yeah.
It's Now take away the anger, take away the desire for from the viewer, and now just put it on the character, where you get to channel that as the viewer through the character, where the character in that genre or subgenre, the character female is assaulted and now has to basically take it upon herself to get even, to bring some form of justice, some form of vengeance, to set things right somehow, to make these people pay. We talked about from a narrative place, it never really works because it feels like you've had this climactic moment in the beginning of the film, which is the assault, the rape. And nothing that ever happens in the film after is going to be as powerful, as climactic narratively. And I'm not talking about for enjoyment. I'm not talking about for excitement. I'm just talking about the impact in terms of a narrative.
Yeah.
So you're starting off with the climax. And so it feels like when you watch these films, it just feels like a slope that's going down.
Yes, with a film like Revenge, yes. But it's the quality of the filmmaking. It doesn't happen with this.
Well, I think I think that it's just kind of the way that the way that kind of story is set up is that you have this huge fucking life-changing event that so a normal story that's like a traditional fucking like plot structure is that you have a life-changing event that sets the story in motion, and you have this big problem, and you have little problems on the way to solving the big problem, but at the end you have like the big moment where you have to deal with that problem in order to get to the other side of that life-changing, inciting incident, right?
Yeah.
This, by telling it in reverse, you start with the revenge, and basically backwards you build towards the rape, which is the most traumatic, the most climactic narratively. So instead of resolving, you find out how it happened.
Yeah.
So it starts off as kind of like this, almost like a murder mystery, where it's like, okay, there's a body. Now we're gonna find out, or even if sometimes in some of those stories you know who the killer is, but now you're gonna go back and find out the why.
Yeah.
So it solves that narrative problem where you can't build after the rape scene.
You're right in that sense, but the difference is with this, it's a different type of storytelling and a different narrative structure, such that it becomes an extreme tragedy. This film would be a tragedy no matter what, but with this film, in essence, you're starting off with the most violent aspect, and then you're slowly
you lead to the most peaceful.
Yes,
yeah, idyllic,
which is more hopeful. It ends hopefully, but then you're struck with the realization that she's dead, or if she's not dead, she's so disfigured and so psychologically damaged. Vincent Cassel is in prison. The former lover, he's definitely in prison. These cops give not a shit about them or justice, because all they're saying is they're taking out, you got the sense that these cops, the way they're talking to them, they're talking to them, you faggots, you're going to prison, you're going to get fucked in the ass, they don't have condoms, you're going to get AIDS. There's no attempt to understand what the hell happened. It's just, this is a gay club, and we're writing it off as the violence that exists in this world. There's questions on the homophobia of this film, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But I think this is an extreme tragedy because At the end of the film, which is the beginning, you see this couple. They're happy. It's loving. You slowly realize that it's going to end badly. You slowly realize that he's an immature asshole.
Yeah.
But you also find out that she's pregnant. She was embarking on a new path in her life, and it was going to be a completely different life for both of them. And now she is, I don't even know to say, the typical thing is she's lucky to survive. Is she? I don't know.
Right. We don't know.
I don't know. Well, I mean,
we don't even know if she does survive.
If she survives, is she lucky? I mean, I look at this film and I just see the pain in every frame of it, and it doesn't shy away from it, but it doesn't present its story in a way that it's supposed to. It's so matter of fact that is why it's troubling. There's no point in this film where I think, I guess with Death Wish and the Death Wish films, you have to have a rape in order to give Charles Bronson
a reason.
Purpose.
Yeah, he needs
it. Like it's almost like, oh, they needed to rape my daughter because now I'm fulfilling my purpose.
At that point, they're just using the character for the story. I mean, that's basically what it is. She's collateral damage in terms of the narrator in the narrative. She's a device.
Yeah,
she's not a person. So it's kind of like she's at that point not much different from a flat tire. That it's like, oh well, I got a flat tire, so I had to pull over, and because I pulled over, then this happened, and because this happened, and that happened, and the next thing you know, here we have our movie. Because that's what all plot is. But this is kind of like it, although it is very much like, well, this happened, and so therefore she went to go cross the street, but some prostitute was like, no, you should go under here because it's safer than crossing this crazy street. And then she goes down there. Had she not gone down there, it wouldn't have happened. But this is kind of like you're seeing everything spin out of control, but you're seeing it spinning in reverse. And I don't want to do the thing because the question of like, is she better off? I also don't want to buy into the idea that now if she survives because she's been assaulted, she's now this broken thing.
Yeah.
That would be better off dead. You know what I mean? Like I
understand what you're saying but I'm saying it out of pure empathy. I'm saying it from the pursuit, from the point of view of, I don't know if she could be much stronger than me. I don't know that I would want to experience something like that and live. That's what I mean by it. It's not a now you're broken and now you are broken. We're all broken. I'm fucking broken from watching this fucking movie. But there is a and I don't mean to diminish. There is a psychological break here. No, I'm serious. I'm very fucking serious. This movie. When movies are this powerful, they challenge you. They destroy a certain part of you. You don't. I can't imagine sitting down and talking with a rape victim after watching something like this, because I would be and okay, you can slap me with the selfish glove, but the discomfort and the inability to relate and just the sadness. And she could be like, fuck you, I went through it. You know what I mean?
Well, sure. But you're talking about talking to a rape victim,
yes,
or survivor, however you want to describe it, about that, or just in general, like knowing that person went through that?
Both. Knowing.
Because, I mean, I'm sure you probably already have.
I probably have, yeah.
But you don't know that because it's kind of like statistics. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But all that aside, going to the question of now, is there any inherent homophobia because of the depiction, or um, I don't buy that, um, because I don't subscribe to this idea that um, people who are like in a protected classification, who would be like on the job in this like protected classification based on, like gender, blah blah blah. I don't believe that because those people. I don't believe that people who are discriminated against, or who can be picked on, are subject to
excuse.
Wait, let me try to formulate it. I don't believe that people who can for various reasons ever be subjugated to, or subjected to workplace discrimination, et cetera, are now cannot be shown to be fucked up just because of that classification. I don't believe that if you show someone with a rainbow pin on their backpack shoplifting, that now it's like, oh my God, you're showing gay people to be, they're all thieves, and they're all, if you think that means that everyone who has that pin on their backpack is a thief, then you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, so don't, and people will pretend for their own kind of either activist or political or views agenda to kind of push those kind of arguments. So it's like, and I do think there's a spectrum there. So it's kind of like, if you look at the overwhelming like presentation of, let's say, African Americans in media, you're going to get a lot more crime depictions than for depictions of them as professional. Yes, sure. That I'll buy that, right? That's harder to argue against than however many films exist where someone who is on the level of this fucking character committing a rape, to where it's like, oh well, this means that Gaspar Noé has something out against gay men, because, and I what I read about him was that he put himself in that club,
masturbating,
to show that he did not feel that he was superior to them. And in other films, he has trans performers as playing cisgendered characters. He has trans performers playing trans characters. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that on the one hand, I don't think he's a prude for sure, but I also don't think that he has this kind of like necessarily like some kind of like
agenda against the gay community,
agenda, or on one extreme to have that it's an agenda, where it's like, oh, I'm gonna this is my anti-gay propaganda, where I'm gonna feature an attack by a gay character, and it's gonna really like damage their community. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that it's that, and I also don't think that it's the other end of the spectrum, where it's like this unconscious bias against him, where he's just kind of like, well, duh, like, I guess, like, I don't see that. I see this this character. I don't see this character as like, when I see that person, I don't say, oh, this is a male who falls in love with males, or who's attracted to males. You know what I mean? Like, that's not what that character is about. I just see violence mixed with sexuality, and this is the kind of person that would like rape anything, and anyone. You know what I mean? It's not about that. He's looking for a fucking hole.
No, he's looking to degrade and violate, and
on top of all
bring
of that,
pain. Yeah.
Yes. And it's also like I said earlier, like, what was this person also subjected to?
Yeah.
and not necessarily coming from a place of like, oh, I
Or
also
forgiveness.
empathize with him,
Yeah.
or kind of like as an excuse, because there's a part of me that's like, well, this person should be punished, and even there's a part of me that's like in horrible ways, right?
Yeah.
Do I do I think that I need to see a film where Monica Bellucci now can shoot an arrow and fucking like build all these crazy contraptions out of nowhere and do all this other crazy shit? Well, after being raped, she fucking still looks like so-called hot now,
Yeah.
and like, but also like tough, and rides a motorcycle and does all this like nonsense. Like, I don't need to see that either. But it's these are muddy waters,
Sure.
and this person was not created in a vacuum. This person, if any character exists as a character who has a background, who has a backstory, and you don't get to be that person on Tuesday and on Monday you're okay. This is a long process to become that character, and that character in the club, when his associate, we'll call him, is mistaken for him, and a scuffle ensues, and then now his associate gets his head bashed in. This guy's laughing.
Yeah.
This guy's laughing about it right there. So, and the group is into it. So these are not. This is like another level of fucking like enthusiasts, we'll call them. You know what I mean? This is not fucking. These are not. This is not a gay couple that's trying to adopt kids and fucking have the white picket fence and like, all that. And
This is extreme. Yeah.
Yeah, this is some other levels of shit. So the next question I think is like, well, I'm not sure how many. I wonder about like the idea of, especially from American audiences,
Yeah.
the idea of like doing it backwards. Is it a gimmick? I don't think that, but I can see that kind of statement being thrown out there. And for the sake of that fucking straw man that I'm creating, that someone else is making that argument, I actually go to Tarantino. I don't know if it was with Charlie Rose or who it was that, and he's probably said it a bunch of different times. But when he was talking about Pulp Fiction and how it's not a chronological story, his point was that had he done that in the form of a novel, no one would care, or no one would be like, no one would make anything out of it because they would just accept it in the form of a novel. And I tend to agree with that. But when he did it in a film, it was kind of like, oh well, why is it a gimmick? Is it, well, what's the point? And I do agree with that. When it comes to Noé, I don't see his shit as I see his shit as style, but I think his style is not only like his stamp, his print, his imprint. I think it also reflects like his view of the world as he tells it through cinema. So it's like tends to be chaotic. It goes back to what we said about the club environment, hallucinatory, nightmarish to a certain degree, immersive for sure, very challenging, visually, auditorially, like, hey, listen, like it's like you're gonna walk into this fucking loud ass club late at fucking night, and you're walking in, and You can walk out whenever you want, but this is what it is. And don't expect like something that it isn't. This is who I am. He makes interesting camera choices. His shit spins, his shit bird's eye views all the time. Light, darkness. It's fucked up, but it's another side of reality and the artistic interpretations of reality that I'm glad that they exist. I like Gaspar Noé's work a lot, even though I don't necessarily like I'm not like, oh yeah, like I love this movie. This is my favorite fucking movie. It adds to the canon of cinema. In part because it is so difficult, because we need this type of shit.
When you address the idea of a gimmick, which this has been called, I think you have to ask yourself, what is the definition of a gimmick? So how would you define a gimmick? Is it a cheat? Is it a way of telling a story that cheats the audience? And is it a hack? For me, a gimmick is a hack. I don't think this is a hack.
I feel like if people are going to call this film a gimmick, what they would be getting at would be a gimmick as a kind of an idea that is artificial for the purposes of like making it different enough so that can be a point of the point of difference is the point of sale. So it's like, all right, I'm going to tell a story, but it's not like it's happening organically where it's like, oh, this is how it's coming out, or this was now that it makes sense to do it backwards. It's like, no, I'm going into it with this idea that I'm going to do a bank robbery, but in a world where everyone is a duck. And it's not even necessarily like symbolic. It's just like fucking something stupid that you think is going to quote stupid, that's going to sell, or it's going to stand out, or it's going to just be weird, or it's going to be whatever, or it's, well, I'm going to do this fucking movie backwards. And it's going to be different because everyone always does movies forward, but I'm going to do it backwards. And so it becomes this kind of like point of difference, like I said, for the purposes of creating a buzz or selling more tickets or whatever, where that's the kind of tag that I would put when people say, oh, this is just a gimmick. Like, he's just telling a story backwards because he's trying to be different. Oh, he's trying to do this. Oh, Tarantino doing a movie out of order. Oh, maybe if they say Jim Jarmusch, oh, he's just trying to be artsy by putting it in black and white. This movie could have just been in color. You know what I mean? Oh, this movie is it's an American film, but it's all in French. Like, that's a gimmick. Rather than actually like having the style reveal some kind of statement that this person's making about the world that they're creating.
Well, I think definitely with this film, the narrative, the way the narrative plays out, it is a much different film than if it had been told straightforward linear from beginning to end. I think it comments differently, it plays differently, it leaves you with a different feeling, and there's I think it's extreme in the level. I think I feel worse watching it the way it is now than if I had watched it from beginning to end. I don't think it would work as well. I think the story is strong enough to work, but I don't think it would work as well. I don't think it would work nearly as well. Yeah. For me, it's not a gimmick. I understand. But that's to tell you the truth, the gimmick thing is just lazy film criticism.
It's also, I think, anti intellectual. It's it's built into that argument is that like you always want shit to be the most simplistic, fucking like straightforward thing. Otherwise, it's want to be artsy, or it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's pretentious.
Yeah.
And then also like you add to the fact that it is a French film.
Yeah.
And so that's gonna get that kind of American audience, I think, also. Where it's like not everything is gonna be a fucking Western, not everything's gonna be a fucking Steve McQueen film where, you know what I mean, like where the characters hardly say anything, like or they only say what they mean. You're gonna get films that fucking where people pontificate, where people philosophize. You're gonna get that in foreign films. You're gonna get that in maybe not in American films because there's an American gimmick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, you know, Jerry Bruckheimer, an explosion is worth 1,000 words. You know what I mean? So it's like, but that's not how the world works. But is this more than a 9-minute rape scene? Yes, it is.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Should you see it? Yes, you should.
I don't know. That I don't know. It depends on, I mean, because you can't unwatch this film.
No. But I think it's like if you're interested, I'm not going to say don't watch it because it's going to upset you. I mean, like,
if you're willing to subject yourself to the discomfort, and if you're willing to have your mind altered to a certain degree, yeah, this is a movie that you can watch. I think if you have, I think it would be very difficult for certain people.
Of course. I mean, that is true.
Yeah.
And if it's going to be that difficult for you, it's not like no one's going to fucking force you to watch this movie.
No, that's
hopefully.
But we're talking about would we recommend it. I would recommend it from the standpoint of the power of filmmaking and narrative storytelling.
Yeah.
Yes. But I would not if a friend of mine were to ask me, hey, you got a movie that you recommend? This would not be the one that I would push on them.
And I would also like say, don't let this be your first Gaspar Noé film necessarily. Depending, maybe. I mean, this is my first one that I saw.
It was my first, yeah.
And I like his films. I like his style. I like the world that he creates, even though I don't want to live there. You know what I mean? Like, so anytime you're going to get a unique voice telling unique stories that, yes, are difficult and tragic.
Yeah. You got to be brave
I'll
enough to go there.
Those.
Yeah.
I'll pick those over the fucking same fucking shit that we have out there that you can see any fucking day just by turning on your TV and going through the fucking seemingly infinite number of fucking apps that we can choose from, where you end up spending more time clicking through shit than you actually do watching shit. Or go to any fucking like actual movie theater and it's gonna be, that's a gimmick. That's, you know what I mean? Like, I get it. You want to go fucking, you want to feel good for 2 hours. That's cool. Everyone has their own thing. Like, if I'm at work and I'm fucking passing the time, maybe I'm listening to the Lost OJ confession. You know what I mean? And like, that's how that makes, not that it makes me feel, oh my God, I feel so good listening to this, but that's how I'm passing my time.
Yeah.
Like, that's whatever. That's one thing. If it's like, hey, like, At some point, I'm gonna fucking go see Moana 2. That's not my first pick, but like I'm gonna see it, and I'm gonna have, on some level, I'm gonna have a good time. That's different than something like this, where it's like this is a different level of creativity. This is a different level of dealing with subject matter that is more difficult, and so it needs a different type of touch. And as an audience, you have to kind of like build that muscle. Our audience knows what's up.
Yeah.
So we're fucking preaching to the choir. As difficult as some of these things are, like there are things that our audience has seen that we haven't seen. You know what I mean? Like, so it's kind of like, if you haven't seen this, it exists. Consider it. If you haven't bought us coffee yet, consider it. We need it, just like you need it. Buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos. Thank you very much.